I'm Warren Smith with World News Group. When Kiley Humphries was in college, she was on a fast path. President of her student body at the King's College in New York, she had acceptance letters from top law schools. But Kiley, like many of her generation, doesn't define success in terms of money and prestige, but by obedience to God's calling on their lives and by the roles they can play in the lives of others. So she set law school aside, at least for a while, and took a one-year assignment at Shelterwood, a residential program for struggling teens in rural Missouri. I traveled to Shelterwood just outside of Kansas City to get a tour of the facility and to hear Kiley's story.
I wanted to do something different, at least for a short period of time, not necessarily long term, but felt the need to take advantage of this season of my life where I was free and available and could work in a 24-hour setting and give of my time and energy in a way that was unique to this part of my life. And had heard about Shelterwood, had known about the work that they were doing, had never once thought it would be something I would want to do, but God just tugged on my heart over and over and over again repetitively, and I applied and went through the application process and just found a lot of confidence knowing that this was where I needed to be, at least for this year.
Because she did have such outstanding career and graduate school options, I asked her to say more about the decision-making process that brought her here.
As somebody who's trying to figure out what to do with their life, and in a season where you feel like you have a lot of doors open to you, it can become really hard to see the forest for the trees. You feel like this is what I have to do because I'm supposed to do something that looks like this, and this is how I'm supposed to influence people in this particular setting. And I think I just realized that that I wanted to spend my time and my energy doing something that would last, and not contrasting that with the potential to be a lawyer, because that's valuable work that can change lives and people and cultures, but just that it wasn't all I could do. And if I felt like my gifts and talents could lead me to work well with teenagers in a therapeutic setting who needed somebody in their lives to speak truth and to be honest and to be strong and to love them through difficulty, and if I felt like that was what God was calling me towards, that was more important than anything else I could do.
As a politics, philosophy, and economics major at King's, she was exposed to the big ideas of Western culture. I asked her if her experience at Shelterwood has altered her understanding of these big ideas.
I could have told you before I worked here that the family is an integral part of society and that everything revolves around the stability of family units, but living life with broken families has just cemented that even more so. So just the idea that the family is a vital unit in society, that the way that we think about marriage and children and just kind of basic everyday living and the decisions that are made in homes all across this country and across the world affect culture, affect society, affect government. So that has cemented something in my head that I thought really vaguely, but I see now so clearly. So what will I do with that is a good question. I mean, I'm stepping into marriage, which is an interesting component to add to that right now. So I'm joining my life to somebody else's to do work in ministry for the future.
My conversation with Kiley took us all around the beautiful Shelterwood campus. We eventually settled onto the front porch of one of the lodges where some of the female residents live. I asked Kiley if this year at Shelterwood had changed the advice she would give to others trying to discern God's call on their lives.
Yeah, keep searching, and looking and asking questions, looking at your own strengths and abilities. What have I been gifted in that I could use that would be helpful? Not limiting yourself to options that you've always thought, I will do this, or that people have necessarily expected you to do, but also just a willingness to see your life as more than yourself. We're all so caught up in who we are and what we look like to the outside world, and I think it's freeing to just see your time and energy as something that is able to be given away, and that with that comes passion and fulfillment and freedom to be who you're created to be. And so to look even in nooks of society and opportunities that you wouldn't have even thought of necessarily to begin with, but that may be the perfect place for you to use your gifts and skills for God's glory. And I just think that takes creativity and a willingness to think outside the box sometimes. And it may lead you to strategic, influential positions, but maybe in a roundabout way that you weren't expecting.
In the course of our conversation, Kiley told me a story that she said had a life-changing impact on her.
I was in a situation with a resident who was frightened and wasn't thinking quite clearly, and in the course of running away decided to jump in a river, and I was tasked to follow her and ended up going in after her, and we, through a course of kind of some bad situations, we both almost ended up drowning. And I just remember vividly being in that water and feeling like I was probably going to die, that there were no escape, there wasn't an escape, there wasn't anybody there to help us, and just seeing life in a clear, strikingly clear, tragic way. Just what's important and what's not, and what is going to last and what's not going to last, and just being faced to look at your life and see it as potentially almost over, and come to grips with what it is that you're called to do and why it's important. And so I just think being in that situation and thinking I could die right now, and if so, this would be the last thing I would have done, is work here at Shelterwood for this year. And that would have been exactly what God would have called me to do. And that put just a real concrete clarity to my calling here. This is where God has me, and I shouldn't doubt that that's His intention for this time, and that He is in charge of the next step as well. And so it gave me a lot of peace to be here, and just the courage to kind of step forward in new and even dangerous ways that I might not have had otherwise.
Kiley's decision to work at Shelterwood first came to my attention because of an article she wrote for World Magazine. Before I took my leave of Kiley and Shelterwood, I asked her to read a portion of that essay.
My job includes chores and kitchen duty, but I will also have a task of incredible value, loving a few teenagers unconditionally through struggle. If someone had asked me a year ago where I might be, I would have gone through 100 guesses before landing on Shelterwood. I imagined I would be doing something that had a bit more of a changing the world ring to it, something that sounded strategic, academic, influential, and resume building. Nevertheless, I have full confidence this is the right step. I would never present my decision as an exact map to follow. In general, I think graduate school is a good idea. I think difficult jobs are worth taking. I like crafting a good resume. There is more to consider than prestige, but I should not scorn it. I want to make decisions courageously, trusting that God's direction is steady and sure, but not always what I expect and not always when I want it. Two things bolster my confidence and steady my conviction in this decision. The first is that God calls us to faithful pursuit of His purposes, and so surrendering my own plans and trusting God's direction is a necessary part of achieving the gutsy, hard, and joyful life He promises. The second is that life is a marathon, not a sprint. My heroes, both dead and alive, were all called to things they had not even considered in their 20s. I may spend the next few years doing a job that prepares me for a calling I have yet to imagine. Shelterwood may appear to be a diversion from a leadership path. I am realizing it is an opportunity for God to develop my resolve and prove Himself sufficient.
Since visiting with Kiley at Shelterwood, her year has ended. Soon after that, she got married. She's now Kiley Crossland, and she lives in Boulder, Colorado with her husband, who's in law school. Reporting for World News Group's New Christian Voices series, I'm Warren Smith.